Rabbit strip diver. Step 1.
Here we're going to use a bass popper hook and some tan monocord thread, and it's very important we use monocord here because we're going to be spinning some deer hair.
Step 2.
Now we're going to tie in some flashabou or crystal flash, just something of a color of your choice.
Step 3.
Next thing, we're going to tie in a big long zonker strip, and again to match the body color of the fly that you choose. This is a natural zonker.
Zonker's a rabbit, isn't it?
It's a rabbit strip, exactly. Right up to the hook point. I'm going to trim that off with some length to it. Probably 3 times the length of the hook.
Step 4.
Now what we want is some deer hair, and we want something that's going to be appropriate for spinning, something a little more hollow, again off the side or belly of the deer. Take that and comb it out, either your fingers or your comb.
Guess with a thicker bunch it's easier to use the comb.
Yeah, exactly, or something with a little bit shorter hair, you can get the comb in there easier. Here, we've got something with a little bit of a darker tip, this deer hair. This is going to be the collar on the fly. You can see the distance we're trying to get here.
So you're using the tips towards the back on this?
Exactly, and we're not going to cut these natural tips off. We're going to leave them on, so that's why we've chosen some nice non-broken tipped hair. We don't want to wrap towards the tail of the fly, because we want to keep those tips laid down flat. You can see there, they're laying down. Only wrap towards the eye of the hook. This will prevent those tips from flaring. Compress that with your fingers and get it tied back nice and tight. Having this deer compact is quite important.
Step 5.
We'll come in with another cluster of deer hair, already prepared, combed out, with using the butt ends because they're a little bit more hollow than the tips.
So you went butt end this time towards the back?
Correct, because now we're just creating a body that we're going to trim.
I see.
So we want those hollower hairs. And push it right up tight.
Step 6.
Now what we're going to do is tie in some deer hair with a bit of contrast color, whether it be yellow or orange or red or even green. Comb that under fur out. Spin that in butt ends first, again because this part of the hair is a little more hollow and a lot easier to spin than say the tips. Work your way towards the tail and back towards the eye. Press that in there tight. Having this fly nice and tight will make all the difference in the world when it comes to trimming it. See how I use your thumb and forefinger to compress the hair.
Step 7.
We're just creating the nose on the fly now. They're nowhere near as thick as the last few clumps. Couple loose loops and pull tight. And compress it to keep the eye clean.
Step 8.
And whip finish. It's also an option to put a weed guard on this fly, although we didn't on this one.
What's a weed guard exactly?
A weed guard's a piece of line that runs from the eye of the hook up the hook bend to keep it clear of weeds.
Step 9.
Now what we're going to do is trim some of the hair. We're going to trim it fairly flush on the bottom, right up to those natural tips we don't want to snip off that we tied in our first cluster. Keep that nice and flat.
Now the importance of the flat bottom is to keep the gap exposed, is it?
Exactly. And now that we've got that gap clear, let's come in and trim right up till we get to the orange ring that we've tied in. You can see that separation there. And trim this on a bit of an angle, angling upwards from the eye.
Now, even though we're cutting it to make it look like something, is there a practical reason for this this angle of cut?
It's going to be kind of like a mouse or a salamander.
Mm-hmm.
So we want it to have a bit of a tapered head.
Does it also help when you pull it? It makes it want to dive a bit and pop up, or?
Well, although it's a popper and you use deer hair, I don't really think that this fly is going to float all that well. It might ride subsurface because it has a big zonker tail. It's going to tend to absorb water.
Oh, yes.
Although a whole bunch of fly floating might help it keep afloat a while. Now here, this next ring of deer hair that we've spun is going to be trimmed a little bit longer than the head that we originally trimmed. You'll see, you'll get, when you look at a front view of the fly, you'll get a better idea of what we're trying to do. You can see there from underneath what kind of shape we're trying to create. And now we're going to leave all those natural tips.
Step 10.
Now we're going to zap a gap, a couple more eyes on this fly. And again, the eyes of choice. You can use whatever eyes you like, big ones, small ones. There's some yellow eyes. You might want to put on some big pearl doll eyes or whatever you like. A little more glue to try and prolong them from falling off. There you have it. A rabbit strip popper diver.